Welcome back, everybody, and today we're taking a look at another film in the Universal Horror Monsters and Curiosities box set from Umbrella Entertainment. And today we're taking a look at 1944's Jungle Woman. So this is a sequel to Captive Wild Woman, which is also on the same disc as this one. And it is directed by Reginald Leborg, who I've seen 5 other films from. He also did 3 of the Inner Sanctum films, best of which were Calling Dr. Death. That's a series that regularly pops up when you look at these kind of B-movie horror films from the 30s or 40s, which kind of shows how, I guess, either influential those films were or just how big of a, in movie industry, how big of a horror, how big B-movie horror films were back at that point. But he also did one of the Mummy films, The Mummy's Ghost, and Diary of a Madman with Vincent Price, which is probably my favourite of the films that I've seen from Reginald Leborg so far. And yeah, this is a horror film clocking at 61 minutes long, and the likes of Evelyn Ankers, Milburn Stone, and Aquanator all return from the previous film. Now, I didn't mention Aquanator before because I didn't think I'd seen her in anything before, but apparently I have. But yeah, she's the ape woman in this film, and as she was in the previous one. And joining the returning cast, you've also got J. Carol Naish, who was in House of Frankenstein, which is another film we've talked about in this box set. Then you got Samuel S. Hines, who was in a whole slew of these kind of horror films from the 30s and 40s. He was in the 1935 version of The Raven, Son of Dracula, Man-Made Monster, and Night Key. Then you got Louise Collier. She was also in one of the Inner Sanctum films, Weird Woman and The Cat Creeps. Then you got Douglas Dumbrille, who was also in The Cat Creeps, as well as The Catman of Paris, and another one of the Inner Sanctum films, The Frozen Ghost, although I think that was my least favourite of the 6. But yeah, Paula, the ape woman, has survived the events of the prior film and is now running around a creepy old sanitarium run by the kindly Dr. Fletcher, reverting to her true gorilla form every once in a while to kill somebody. So, although this is definitely livelier than its predecessor and does benefit from not featuring so heavily the circus aspect, it is nonetheless far from a perfect effort. So, the narrative structure to this is basically set in the future in terms of certain events that have, and then recounting certain events that have happened in the past. So we're having a coroner proceedings. I'm not sure what you'd call them, but basically, Dr. Fletcher is being accused of murdering Paula the ape woman, and then basically we're having scenes recounted either from the first film or scenes that have happened in this film. So, yeah, unfortunately, that means it does reuse footage from that first film to both re-establish what happened in that film and also help set up the plot for this, which is partly understandable as being able to see films on the fly back in the 1940s would have been near impossible because obviously there was no such thing as Blu-ray or DVD or VHS, and yeah, unless a theatre or cinema would have re-released the original film to in anticipation of this one, then you would have been hard pressed to have remembered the events of that prior film, given it was the year prior. So unless your memory's very very good and you remember a film from a year ago, then yeah, I can understand why they would have re-established the events of that first film, but ultimately it does feel like filler, and it could have easily have been trimmed down instead of taking up a vast proportion of the first act. That said, the cast is still good, especially those that are returning. The pacing is on point. Paula does more in this. I don't believe she talked in the prior film, or at least talked much, whereas she definitely talks a lot more in this, while although she's far more involved in the plot itself, as, like I said, without the circus act stuff, which she obviously was present in, but she just stood there and made everyone think that, well, the whole idea was that she could control the animals that they are ringleader, played by Milburn Stone. Um, she could control the animals to make them not be as violent towards him as possible. But all that she did in those scenes was to stand there and stare. Whereas in this film, she's more involved. She's clearly getting jealous again about another person that she's in love with, which she did in the first film, but it feels a little bit more well earned in this one. And yeah, like I said, she talks, and yeah, she's also quite clearly the one that's going around killing people here as well. It's not merely hinted at in certain ways. The plot is also more cohesive as it doesn't feel like two halves, as the first film felt like a mix of, like I said, the circus events and the whole mad scientist element, whereas this just feels like a cohesive element to itself. Whereas instead of jumping between the mad scientist bit and the circus scenes, whereas this, yeah, is all about the sanitarium, Paula, and the people that are returning from the prior film as well. It also doesn't outstay its welcome, and the narrative structure, although deflating some of the tension, is at least also different from the first film. So, yeah, this is another one that's going to get a 3 out of 5. I was contemplating, due to the reusing of footage, dropping it to 2.5 out of 5, but I did enjoy enough of the rest of the film to make feel like it made up for that reusing of the footage. I just wish it was trimmed down and we got more original film rather than just reusing footage. But it does use it in a slightly interesting way in terms of introducing our Dr. Fletcher, as apparently he was at that circus during the ending, where all hell's breaking loose when a lightning storm destroys part of the circus and sets all the animals going off on a mad one. So basically, you see his perspective of those scenes. You can tell very well that it's just reusing the footage and then just inserting some new footage of him in an audience. But it does at least use it in an interesting enough way in that regard. But the rest of it could definitely have been trimmed down from using that footage from the first film. But nonetheless, yeah, it gets a 3 out of 5, like I said, and it's in the 1:37:1 aspect ratio, black and white, just like the first film was. 2.0 dual mono DTS HDMI audio again. And yeah, then you've also got the film in the 1080p high definition presentation. Looks and sounds perfectly good. English language soundtrack as well, and then English subtitles for deaf and hard of hearing on top of all of that. So yeah, no trailer for this one. I think there is a trailer for the third film. But yeah, a decent enough effort. This is hardly going to be the best trilogy in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but it is still nonetheless a decent follow up to the first film. And yeah, at least just try some new elements to set itself apart. I just wish it didn't have that reused footage. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what the third and final film in this trilogy is gonna be like, which is the sorry, I've lost it now. The Jungle Captive from 1945. Um, that's directed by Harold Young. Not sure if I've seen anything from them before. But it does look like it's a mostly new cast in that film. And I do believe that's because the actress whose nickname was Aquanata actually left Universal because she felt like she was being used. So that's probably why there is a whole new cast in this one. So in this next one. So yeah, but nonetheless, thank you for watching. If you have seen Jungle Woman before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.